This is Ed Amoroso from Tag Cyber, and I'm here with my friend Rudolph Araujo, who is the Senior Director of Cybersecurity at Arista Networks. Rudolph, it's nice to see you. How are you?
Good to see you as well, Ed, and it's a pleasure and an honor to talk to you today.
Always fun to talk to you. You and I have been friends for a while now. Hey, we're going to talk about integrating security into network infrastructure, which is something that's near and dear to my heart. But before we do, share a little bit about yourself, about your background.
Sure. For better or worse, I guess, a couple of decades in cybersecurity now. Started out at a company called Foundstone, which some people remember as we wrote the books Hacking Exposed, that really I think in some ways started the cybersecurity craze, and then went through a couple of acquisitions with Foundstone. We sold the company to McAfee, and then eventually sold McAfee sold to Intel. And at that point, I guess I figured no one's going to buy Intel anytime soon. So I left and went to FireEye. We took the company public, went through that kind of whole effort, and then eventually made my way to Awake Security, and then Awake has since been acquired by Arista.
Well, it's wonderful. It's so good to see you, and I'm glad that you're working in such a fine firm. Now, in the area of networking, what we found is that early networks were not designed with security, as we all know. I'm sure you figured that out back in the old Foundstone days, writing signatures then. But obviously we need controls. So share with us a little bit about how at Arista you guys are integrating the network controls right into the infrastructure. Like this is a unified play. It's something that I find very attractive. So talk to me a little bit about how you do that. How do you go about integrating security right into the network infrastructure?
Yeah, I think it comes back to this idea that networks fundamentally have changed, right? I mean, the networks of even a year, 2 years, 5 years ago are no longer what they are. And so to be able to effectively monitor those networks, you do need, as to your point, be integrated into the network infrastructure. And there's a couple of places to do that, right? I mean, if you think about the switching infrastructure, the switches see every packet going across the wire. So if you can monitor the network there, and not just monitor it from a traditional kind of network performance monitoring perspective, right, where you look at net flow data and say, okay, hey, who's talking to who, but really be able to introspect and get deeper into, okay, I see this is a Kerberos packet. What is that Kerberos packet telling me? Is this someone that is trying a brute force attack, etc.? So by sitting at that switch layer, you can really inspect, but then on the flip side of that, you can also start to take action, right? So if you decide that, Ed's computer is maybe misbehaving, and I'm sorry for picking your new Ed as an example here, you have the ability to take that switch port down right away as well. So I think there's some real value in baking security at that infrastructure level, because it really helps, I think, reduce the time to detection, but also reduce the time to response.
It suggests almost that a lot of the network security controls that one might embed would be useful for things other than security. It helps you just run the network, right? I think the example you just used, I can think of 1,000 reasons why you'd want to be diagnosing that. Do you find that to be the case? Do you find that there's generally a lot of value that's created for multiple teams?
Absolutely, right? I mean, if you think about visibility as a fundamental, kind of requirement from a network, visibility supports not just your security operator, but it also supports a network operator, right? I'll give you an example. We have a large university client, and one of the things the CIO often says to me is like, look, the reason I care about visibility is, I want to figure out who are the students that are using up all my bandwidth with Xbox gaming. But the point he is making is, it's not that I care just about the Xbox gaming. That Xbox gaming and all of the gaming in general, I guess I shouldn't pick on the Xbox specifically, is a way that a lot of the malicious activity also gets into the network, right? So as a customer, it's unique. It's not a unique use case where they're blending what would traditionally be considered network ops kind of use cases with security ops use cases, right? And then so that's kind of the foundation. And then once you have that, they want to be able to ask these questions, right? These rich questions about, okay, hey, at this particular point in time, who was talking to who? What other devices might have shown that same behavior? Can I do some, passive DNS type analysis and say, what other domains should I be concerned about? from an attacker's kind of infrastructure perspective. So you get to ask these deep, insightful questions and have the data and the answers almost pre-computed for you, right? So that they're available in real time. It's not like you run a search and then you come back, a day later, and if you're lucky and if that search hasn't crashed, maybe you get an answer, right? So I do think that these use cases are starting to blend together and starting to serve a variety of purposes, not just a traditional SecOps or a traditional NetOps kind of use case.
Rudolph, have you seen the standards evolving now to where integrated security is just part of networking, or are they still kind of separate? What are you guys seeing at Arista? Do you think the standards organizations get it, or are they still maybe lagging a little bit?
I think they're lagging, but I think they're starting to get there, right? I'll give you an example. Ed, encryption's a great example of this, right? Historically, if you look at some of the largest banks, look at some of the more heavily regulated organizations, they took the approach of decrypting data, and putting in a proxy or something in between there. You drop the keys on it, it'll decrypt all the sessions and so on, right? Well, there's two kind of challenges to that approach, right? One is you've got things like TLS 1.3 that intentionally make it hard because of all of the privacy regulations, et cetera, to do that kind of interception. On the other hand, you've got attackers that don't follow the rules, right? They're not going to use TLS encryption. They're going to use point-to-point encryption, which you can't decrypt anyways. So customers then start to question the value of why am I decrypting? And the answer always comes back, well, my regulators require me to do it. The standards require me to do it. And so now I think you're seeing that feedback being given back to those regulators, given back to those standard bodies saying, this is not the appropriate way to deal with the environment we're in today. So how can we get smarter about it, right? And one of the big investments we've made is in this idea of encrypted traffic analysis. Can we get deep answers about the data without violating privacy, right? Without decrypting the data and peeking inside someone's, online banking transaction or someone's Facebook transaction or what have you. So I do think that the regulators and the standards bodies are starting to get smarter, but maybe in a sense they're not there yet, right? And hopefully we'll get there sooner rather than later.
You mentioned deep answers. Is that kind of the idea? Like the outcomes really are what we're trying to improve here. We're trying to get to the point where ultimately the overall dependability and security of the network is optimized. Is that what we should all be sort of focused on? Just establishing and measuring good outcomes here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's true about everything we do, right? I mean, if you go out and buy a car, if you go out and rent a place on a vacation or what have you, you are looking for that ultimate outcome, right? And I think for too long, maybe in security, which I'm very familiar with, but I think to a large extent, even in networking, it was more about bits and bytes and features and functions, right? As opposed to, okay, what business outcomes are we enabling through this, right? And Ed, I mean, you've been a CISO at a large organization, right? I mean, security oftentimes becomes the naysayers, right? Because it's all about, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. And I think what a lot of CISOs like yourself have kind of evolved to is like, okay, hey, our job is to enable the business and to enable the business in a way that is secure and doesn't put the business at risk, right? So there's plenty of examples of this. IoT is a great enabler, right? I mean, you think about the thermostats and you think about the smart TVs and smart phones and things like that are within our networks today. You can't tell people stop. We can't get any of those devices into the network because those devices enable businesses to be much more agile, much more optimal, if you will. So how can security then provide the analysts the visibility they need to still inspect those devices, still prevent the threats from either targeting those devices or emanating from those devices? So that's a good example of where the outcome really drives the solution as opposed to security saying, sorry, you can't do this.
I mean, a lot of people say that sort of the objective of network security is to avoid this threat, that threat. No, it isn't. It's to make sure the network's running.
Right.
That's the idea. Like if the network's running, then we're good. You can do business, you can innovate, we can grow. But when the network's not running, or it's leaking data, or it's an unsafe place to be, that's the kind of outcome you worry about. And there's a lot of reasons why a network would break, including something completely non-security related. But that's why I love the integration argument, because it places everything in the right context, that it's not just avoiding threat. It's everyone working together to make sure the network is up. Is that how you guys think about it with your customers? I would imagine that probably resonates.
Yeah, it does, right? One of our customers always says, right, look, my job is not to run the most secure network. My job is to run a network that is secure enough to do business, right? And I think that really hits at what you were saying, right? You can raise all of the walls and build all of these perimeters, etc. But if your business can no longer operate, you should be out of a job, right? Because that was not your goal. And clearly, every organization has a different bar. But yes, I do think that more and more customers are thinking about it from that perspective. And from an Arista perspective, we're really set up to kind of enable them to get there, right? How do we bake security in a way that security is not this afterthought? It's an enabler to the technology, to the platform, to the infrastructure.
Well, Rudolph, it's always a delight to chat. You've been at this a long time. Congratulations on a wonderful career. And I'm glad you're working at Arista. I think you guys have a fine offering and customers will do well with your set of products. So thanks for spending some time with us.
Yeah, no, thanks, Ed. A pleasure as always. And, I always learn so much from the questions, so I appreciate it.
That's great. And thanks everyone for watching.